Вітаю, друзі! Це програма «Українська Хвиля» в Монреалі, і сьогодні ми знайомимо вас із Дереком Блуин-Перрі, волонтером з Квебеку, який вже вп'яте їздив в Україну з гуманітарною місією. Дерек зазначив у попередній розмові з нами, що у час, коли російська пропаганда заперечувала існування українського народу, він вирішив приїхати в Україну і побачити все на власні очі. І відкрив для себе живу мову, культуру та історію, за які українці продовжують боротися. Отже, представляю вам Дерека. Hi, Dereck. I'm happy to see you, and let me start with appreciation for your support in Ukraine. Thank you so much for your help.
It's really a pleasure.
We're going to start with the question of who you are. Could you please introduce yourself for our viewers, and could you please precise whether you have Ukrainian roots?
Well, I'm born and raised in Quebec without any Ukrainian roots or friends or families prior to the conflict. Here in Quebec, I was mostly a mountain guide, wilderness first responder, and teacher of first aid and other similar trades.
What inspired you to undertake your first humanitarian mission in Ukraine?
Well, at first, it was a very big feeling of unfairness. When the war started, for me, Ukraine was a very remote country, something maybe I could place on a map, but beyond that, I didn't know much about the country. But the original Russian propaganda said something that really struck me as a Quebecois. When they said basically Ukraine does not exist, it does not have a culture, an identity, a language. Basically, the Russians were trying to belittle the whole nation into they're just misplaced Russians and we'll bring them back. And that's something that throughout history has been used in regards to Quebec, clearly not with the same amount of violence. I'm not trying to get an equivalence there, but it was enough to make me wonder, are we being told the truth about Ukraine? Is it really a country? Just as much as Quebec has its own culture and identity, does Ukraine have a right to exist? And that was the basis of at least a curiosity to go and see, well, can I try to understand first? And could I possibly do something to help if it's warranted? Secondly, I've been 5 times now. I go twice a year. So I would have to go back as I usually go in the fall and spring. Those are moments where it's easier for me to get over there. So the war had been ongoing for at least a few months. Clearly, I was not one of the first ones over there. The time it took to get things in order, to make it work with my job. As a volunteer, everything I do over there is on my own time, so it's unpaid vacation. It's my own paying for the tickets, for accommodation, hotel, food, everything that's related to the mission. So it does take a bit of planning. Well, now I'm getting a little bit better at it.
So it was all everything on your cost, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I already had planned to go to Europe for vacation. What I did was change a little bit my itinerary on the first time. And then the first trip was, I don't want to say chaotic, but you don't know what you're getting into. It's a new country, it's a new situation. A lot of people had warned me prior to going, and they said, well, they don't need you. The UN is there, the Red Cross is there. All these big NGOs with bottomless pit budgets are able to take care of it. And people basically said, you'll be in the way, so please don't. But then you get there and you realize you can help. There are huge needs. The big organizations clearly cannot fill everything. And there's a place for more nimble activities, which I realize over time is very interesting because that's something I see Ukrainians do a lot, have their own tiny NGOs, 1 or 2 people working together. All throughout the countries, these activities where they wave camo nets, and a lot of that is, very, very grassroots. And as a very interesting thing to discover is there's a place for everybody who wants to do something good for the country.
Derek, could you describe, please, your role during your operations on the front lines?
At the moment, I spend most of my time working as a paramedic near the front lines. So typically we're based near Pokrovsk. I also always try to keep a significant amount of my time in Ukraine for more humanitarian endeavors. That will be stuff like bringing emergency supplies to villages that are near the front lines, for one. and also trying to bring a little bit of joy to children, to displaced people, but also to the soldiers, most of whom are fighting to save their house, their villages, their countries. Things as simple as bringing down a Santa Claus down to Kostiantynivka under siege and just, spending the day over there and trying to give a smile to the people.
So nice. How did you manage your food convoys or first aid intervention in high-risk zones? I suppose it's not that easy.
Not easy, but the more you go, the more you know people. That makes logistics work better. That part is something that I do fundraising here in Quebec to make work or make happen over there in the country, which at first is not something I was really looking for. When I went to Ukraine, I thought I'm going on my own, and if I can help, that will be enough. But then some friends nearly broke my arm and said, you need to fundraise, you need to try to bring some money and joy, but also actual supplies would be helpful. And that's something that's eventually snowballed into bigger and bigger fundraising events, which is allowing us to, do more with a nimble organization. So basically it's me and myself, a couple of friends. So we don't have administration fees or whatever. It's really just spent where it's useful. And it also creates a very interesting opportunity to talk to people of Quebec about what's going on over there. And also make a bridge between Ukrainian people who, for example, in Quebec City, a lot of them arrived after Crimea and are integrating to a society that they probably did not know much about either. So we're talking about things that unite us, the values that Ukrainian people and Quebec people share, but also these similarities throughout histories, which actually makes us something like brothers.
Thank you, Dereck. And I'm just curious, did you work on your own or with some local or international organizations? And if yes, how are these collaborations established?
It's a lot of collaboration. I go there on my own, so I make my own logistics and itinerary. What I do not bring to Ukraine is an ambulance. Now I can bring supplies, I can bring funding to make it run or pay for repairs or whatever. But I'm going to join, for example, an international group that has doctors and medics from all over the world that are in Ukraine to help. The team also has a significant amount of Ukrainians trying to contribute. Then if I do more humanitarian, it will be mixed with local contacts. And you don't go to frontline areas without at least somebody knowing. Some international NGOs who also have been operating on the ground for a while. But it's very agile. So we'll work with a lot of different partners trying to achieve our goals in this region.
Dereck, can you please tell us about the conditions you observed among civilians living near the dangerous areas?
Conditions are very, very difficult over there. I mean, it's something that people ask a lot. They think because the war is no longer on the news every day that things are going better. I would say it's not in the news, but that doesn't mean it's getting better. It means a lot of people are getting tired of it. But a lot of places we can see a degrading situation. Also because the front line is moving, but not only that, the weapons used have increasingly long range. Now, with the introduction of fiber optics drone, for example, a lot of villages that were previously out of reach from combat now all of a sudden are somewhat frontline areas. And so the needs are extending from people that are deciding to stay in areas that are theirs. And that's something that a lot of people criticize. They say they should evacuate, they should move away. At the same time, we talk with these people, and it's something that at least I can understand. It's their village. It's their house. They lived there for hundreds of years, and now because of a war, we're telling them abandon everything and move away. I like to think that if Ukrainians were any different, this war would have been over in a couple of days like everybody expected. But that's something everyone underestimated, the will of Ukrainians to cling on to what is theirs, basically their home country. Things are indeed moving. At least one thing that I find particularly difficult is from mission to mission, the frontline moves. So there are places that we used to go, and it was daring to go back then, but we would move back a couple of villages to resupply and then go back a few more villages for a more safe spot to stay in. For example, in June, we were in Pokrovsk. We knew back then in Pokrovsk we were likely some of the last humanitarians to be allowed in the city. There was nobody left in the streets. But after Pokrovsk, we'd go to Dobropilya and just have coffee and pizza and just say or think we're, out of it. We made it, and we made some people happy today. But then Dobropilya today is not a city that we could go there. So we think, all right, let's go to Slovyansk. But Slovyansk now is in the state that Dobropilya was last summer. So things are indeed moving, and it's really difficult to see places that you've come to see as safe havens or places that you built a network in slowly come under this, Russian umbrella of evil.
It's interesting how local people reacted to your help from a person from Canada, from Quebec.
And the first thing is we don't really look like foreigners until we say it. So, but when we do start talking, depending on the region, we get people that are really surprised to find us there. But that's the essence of the message we try to give is we have not forgotten about Ukraine. Every morning, people wake up throughout the world and think about you, about Ukraine, about the whole situation. And that's often what we get is a lot of appreciation. And sometimes people say, well, we're glad you brought food, but what you brought was comfort and hope. And that matters more to us than anything that was in your truck. And it's really nice. Unlike what we were told at first, which was you'll be in the way, we can really see that we are appreciated. Again, being in Kostiantynivka with Santa Claus, the city is not doing well, but people walking out of shelters and basements and military positions just to get a picture with Santa and just laughing a little bit, maybe forgetting for a moment the horror they are leaving. This is what we strive to do.
Thank you, Dereck. And if we're going to speak about skills or training, the most useful skills for you was in Ukraine?
I would say empathy. I would like to think about something technical, but the reality is in Quebec, I am not a paramedic. I'm a wilderness first responder. I am grossly underqualified to be a paramedic in Ukraine. But it does not matter in such situation. There are such needs for medical help. When I was put in contact with the group that I work with, I was very honest. I said, these are my qualifications. I can go up to this skill level. But the reality is there are such needs. And we have doctors working with us. We have people on call. It's a lot of people doing goodwill. But in the end, it comes and it ends at one thing is caring for the people. And to me, that was a main driver. People don't deserve this. And if I was going there for excitement or adrenaline, I would perhaps have gone once and said, okay, I've done it, I've survived. The reason I can't get out of it is I still care about these people. I can't give up. I mean, I definitely have some strand of PTSD when I get back over there. It doesn't matter. And we've had a few close calls. We've had bombs get nearby. We've had drones fly over us. But in the end, it's a choice, at least on my end, that we make, that we want to be over there helping people. So we're in peace with that. What I'm not in peace with is when I get back and the suffering for the people over there still continues. That's the difficult part.
Thank you, Dereck. And could you precise again, when was your last mission in Ukraine?
I left at the end of October and came back at the end of December.
So it's recently. It was recently, yeah?
Yeah, at the tail end of adjusting back to normal life. The most difficult part about being in Ukraine is leaving Ukraine, is being here, knowing everything is still going on over there, is knowing my friends and colleagues and those people that we work with are still going through all this every day.
Dereck, are you planning your next trip to Ukraine?
Yeah, I think there will be a sixth one.
And when?
To think about when I can do it. I just arrived a couple of weeks ago, so I do need to earn some money. I need to pacify my employers because they're giving me a lot of vacation. They're unpaid vacations, so they need to find somebody to work in my place when I leave and everything. But I'm hoping maybe for this spring, I can go for another mission.
The most memorable moments, positive or maybe difficult, of your mission in the field, what would you describe? What of the moments you would say about?
It's one of those stories. In one of my first missions, I was going with a group. We were headed to Kherson, which had been recently liberated. And so some groups were going in with humanitarian aid, baking food, and I had a very limited amount of fundraising. So I thought we should buy apples. It's just an idea. Like, we had not a lot of money, but we thought maybe we can add some oatmeal, apples to whatever these guys were already doing. And we're giving food to children down the streets of Kherson and having this nice event. And I realized in the distance some old babushka is looking around, and she looks a little bit puzzled as to what's happening. And I decided to smile and just, bring an apple, just break the ice. And she started crying. She took me in her arms, and she was basically saying this is the best thing that happened to her in a long time. Now, it's an elder of an age that in any Western country, she would be in a retirement home. Now she's living in this destroyed neighborhood of Kherson that's just been recently recaptured by the defenders. And now I'm struggling because this was, as far as I can tell, perhaps the last apple we had on the truck. We were done with the event. So I go back running, and I'm trying to find, a little bag of oatmeal, maybe an orange, anything that is around in our own belongings that I can give her. And I bring back feeling sorry that it is so little. But the eyes that she looked at me with really meant exactly everything this has all been about. Is the comfort this brought is much more than the apple's value of that day. That's something I remember forever.
Thank you so much for this touching story you shared. Yeah, but was it easy to communicate with those who are volunteering there, Ukrainians?
And a smile will go a long way. Using Google Translate on the ambulance to understand the procedures or the history of the patient, maybe give him some comfort. I speak some very basic Ukrainian, but then over there in the Southeast, they don't speak Ukrainian. They speak some kind of slurry mix of Russian and Ukrainian. That is not always easy to get beyond the couple words that I know medically. So, but again, a good smile will go a long way.
Thank you so much for your missions, for your volunteer in Ukraine. It means a lot for Ukrainians, I'm sure, for us as well. And thank you very much for this conversation. And maybe you have something to say that you feel is important for our viewers.
Well, what matters is the people in the end. It's been the greatest honor of my life to go help Ukraine, but also to learn of this fantastic Ukrainian community we have here. And I hope we can learn more and more what we have in common. That for me was a very big discovery since this whole war. And I hope this can go both ways, that Ukrainians and Quebecois can really become brothers throughout history.
That's for sure. For sure, I can see how Quebecois people are helping Ukrainians here. Thank you very much for your time, and I wish you good luck in your next trip, and see you next time to talk about your volunteering in Ukraine.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Друзі, ви слухали розповідь Дерека Блуан-Перрі, волонтера із Квебеку, про його досвід перебування в Україні. З вами була Наталя Федосєєва для програми «Українська хвиля». Підписуйтесь на нас у соцмережах, будемо вдячні. І до нових зустрічей!